My name is Avery Bennett, and on the 4th of July, the day my family called me invisible with a smile, I wasn't standing beside them in the backyard, counting firework bursts. I was standing 32 floors above Dallas, pen in hand, deciding if my sister's future would carry my signature. At 32 years old, I was still their question mark, while Sloane, my younger sister, was their exclamation point. She had the job title, the tailored romper, the curated applause. I had silence, on purpose. That afternoon, while my parents cheered for Sloane's third-round interview with Lincoln Strategies, they didn't know I was already there. Not just in the building, but in the room where her name would pass across my desk. Executive Director. Approval. Required. That was always my role. Quiet power they never noticed. Funding the things they forgot to thank me for. Erased from holiday photos, yet underwriting the insurance that paid for them. I used to think walking away from family meant failure. Now I know. Some inherit titles. Others build them. Some rehearse their future in the mirror. I write mine in ink. What I didn't realize that day, as I sipped cold lemonade behind the grill line, was how fast their version of the story would collapse the moment they learned who held the final say. Before I tell you what really happened behind that office door, if you've ever been the quiet one in the room, the one left out of the group photo, the one mistaken for nothing until it was too late, leave a comment below. This isn't just my story. Maybe it's yours too. Now, let me take you back to where it all really began. The air in Frisco, Texas on the 4th of July was always heavier than it should be. Hot with patriotism and hickory smoke, sticky with family history. The lawn behind my parents' house was crowded with picnic tables, loud uncles, and a folding buffet table sagging under the weight of potato salad and pride. I stood by the lemonade dispenser, letting the cool condensation of the glass bottle settle into my palm. Across the yard, Sloane was glowing again, sleek ponytail, tailored navy romper, and a white enamel pin that spelled Boss Babe in cursive. She'd brought her own branding to the BBQ. Of course she had. Mom's voice projected over the chatter. Sloane just had her third-round interview with Lincoln Strategies. You know, the one that handled the SnapMerge IPO. Very elite. Oh, wow. Aunt Kathy chimed in, balancing a spritzer and a paper plate. What are they offering her? Something with real leadership, I hope. They're fast-tracking her, Dad said proudly. Executive potential. Her resume practically speaks for itself. I didn't roll my eyes. I'd learned to keep them still. They noticed when you blinked the wrong way. Meanwhile, Mom added with a laugh that bit, Avery's still doing that contract thing, right? She's creative, Kathy offered gently, like describing a stray cat. I sipped the lemonade. Cold, sharp, unapologetic. Sloane stepped closer, catching the sun with every angle of her makeup. It's strategy lead, technically. C-suite adjacent, if we're being honest. Hybrid? Dad asked, already impressed. 3 days in office, the rest flexible. Big focus on transformation and internal innovation. I knew those words. I'd written them. My cousin Blake leaned into the cooler, pulling out a beer. Hey, Avery, didn't you try to apply there once? Sloane laughed first. Oh, I don't think she got that far. The moment passed with polite chuckles. I pretended to check my phone. They all saw me as someone who wandered into their lives occasionally, like a misplaced file on the desktop they were too afraid to delete. Actually, I said, voice even, what team would you be joining? Sloane didn't hesitate. Internal strategy. Apparently, the CEO takes a direct look at every shortlist herself. Super hands-on. Visionary type. Someone behind me muttered, girl boss, and a few plastic cups clinked together. That's impressive, I said and took another sip. She smiled. Well, they reached out to me. Cold LinkedIn message. I guess they saw my project with Macroviz. I let the silence follow. In the distance, the pop of a firecracker interrupted a bird call. I mean, she added, lowering her voice just enough, It's not like everyone can just go start their own little thing and call themselves a CEO, right? I turned slightly. Is that what people say I've done? She waved her hand. Not me, but, you know. A memory sparked. Last Thanksgiving, when Mom decided not to include me in the family photo because I'd worn black slacks instead of red or green. Doesn't feel festive, she said. Why don't you sit this one out? That same emptiness now looped in my chest like a news ticker. Jordan's Slack message buzzed on my phone. Final list approved. Your signatures needed before 7 a.m. I smiled to myself. Sloane's face beamed as Mom returned with a slice of key lime pie just for her. You're going to be our first executive, she cheered. Your father says this will finally make the Bennetts known. I had to step away then, back toward the fence line where the light slanted harsher and the noise softened. My lemonade was half gone. They didn't know. Not yet. No one had asked what I was doing now. No one noticed when I stopped saying freelance and started saying nothing. That suited me just fine. I passed the grill, the smoke curling toward the sky like a quiet uprising. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. Just patient. Tomorrow morning, Sloane would sit in a glass conference room across from a panel of executives. She'd smile. She'd perform. She'd drop buzzwords and bullet points, and then someone would slide a contract across the table. And at the bottom of that contract would be a blank space for my signature. I looked one last time at the backyard. Lawn chairs and paper plates, voices rising over each other, people cheering for the daughter they understood. Then I turned back to the street. I took another sip of my lemonade. It tasted sharp, like justice waiting to happen. No one asks what I do for a living. That's the perk of being underestimated. The 32nd floor of Lincoln Strategies shimmered with glass, chrome, and secrets. But it was the 27th floor. Quiet, sparse, serene, where the real power sat. I entered just after 7:30. The building was barely waking up, but the espresso in my hand was already half gone. The walls of my office bore no degrees, no awards, just light, space, and a single brushed metal plaque with the Lincoln emblem. Sharp lines folded into a minimalist fox. No name beneath it. Never had been. Jordan Kim stood by the digital wall display, flipping through today's candidate packet. His blazer was slightly wrinkled, probably slept at the office again, but his eyes were razor-edged as usual. Big day, he said, handing me the folder. I glanced at the name on top. Sloane Bennett. The letters didn't blur. They didn't burn. They just sat there, arrogant and unaware. She made it past the final screen, Jordan noted, tapping the corner of the resume. HR says she's a rising star. Malik sent her straight through. Of course he did. Malik always loved big declarations and symmetrical formatting. I flipped the page. Sloane's qualifications looked polished. But beneath the numbers and buzzwords, I recognized something much older. A section under Strategic Partnerships. Word for word, a paragraph I once wrote for a community grant proposal 5 years ago. Jordan pointed at it. That part? Pulled directly from the Riverlight Fund's 2021 grant document. I checked the timestamp. Plagiarism? I asked. He shrugged. Borderline. Could be coincidence. Could be flattery. Could be theft. I stared out the glass wall of my office. From this height, Dallas looked like a board game. Movable. Predictable. She said last night she'd pull some strings for me. I murmured. Jordan blinked. Does she even know you're here? No, I said. And let's keep it that way. For now. He nodded slowly. You want me to block her? No, I replied, placing the folder on my desk without opening it again. Let her walk in. Let her believe the door opened by itself. He tilted his head. You planning to be in the room? I don't need to be. Not yet. Down the hallway, the morning lights warmed to full glow. The hum of printers, footsteps, elevator chimes, a company coming to life. We'd acquired a boutique analytics firm last quarter, Rutherford Analytics, and with that came a restructuring. New personnel, new compliance policies, and a new clause. All onboarding approvals, especially for strategy roles, now required a second executive sign-off. Mine. In the morning meeting with the directors, Malik presented the shortlist for strategy hires. "This one's particularly promising," he said, pushing Sloane's file toward me across the conference table. "Confident, vision-oriented, wants to make big impact. You'll like her." I didn't touch the folder. "Everyone's files will be routed to Avery," the legal officer said. "As of this week, all hires need executive director signature before the final offer." Malik looked at me expectantly. I nodded once. "Then I suppose I'll be seeing her. Officially." The meeting continued. I barely listened. Instead, I thought about what it meant to walk into a room believing you belonged, only to learn the gate was guarded by someone you dismissed. Jordan met me outside the glass doors after. "She's scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Panel interview." "Good." "She'll probably expect the onboarding packet by noon. We already drafted it." I walked back into my office. Sunlight pooled on the polished floor. My desk sat empty except for a silver Montblanc pen and the file that carried my sister's future. Jordan followed me in, arms crossed. "Want me to sharpen the pen?" I didn't smile. "Not yet." "No need. I don't stab. I sign." Some people rehearse their future in the mirror. Sloane rehearsed it in mine, and thought she could wear it better. The 12th floor of Lincoln Strategies had no personality, on purpose. Frosted glass, industrial carpet, ceilings too high for comfort. It was built for detachment, for neutrality. The interview room in the center was paneled with one-way glass, perfect for observing without disrupting. I stood behind that glass now, arms folded. On the other side, Sloane took her seat. She wore the same tailored blazer from last night's BBQ, now paired with a crisp ivory blouse. A laptop bag too expensive for an entry-level exec. She adjusted her posture like she'd practiced it. Shoulders back, chin tilted, eyes alert but soft. Jordan whispered beside me, "She crafts her LinkedIn better than her logic." I didn't answer. I was too focused on the pause she took before smiling. 3 seconds flat. Perfectly timed for attention and approachability. The room across from us had 3 interviewers. Malik, who still believed the best resumes told the whole story. Chloe, lead strategist, whose silence was often more brutal than words. And Evan, our CTO, who judged people by how they handled confusion. "Thanks for coming in, Ms. Bennett," Malik said, warm but perfunctory. "Let's start with your understanding of our company vision." Sloane crossed one leg over the other. "Absolutely. Lincoln is at the forefront of digital transformation and agile strategy. You work with clients to, innovate from within. You're not just about numbers, you're about alignment and purpose." Malik smiled. Chloe didn't. Evan made a small note on his tablet. "Tell us about a time," Chloe said, "when you implemented a structural change that resulted in measurable ROI." Sloane brightened. "At Macroviz, I led a brainstorm initiative where we optimized internal communication pathways. We held weekly pulse meetings, and the morale boost translated into greater productivity." Chloe blinked. "What kind of productivity metrics?" Qualitative mostly," Sloane replied. "But the vibe was very positive. People felt seen." Jordan raised an eyebrow beside me. "That's not an answer." I said nothing. They handed her a case study next, simple but strategic. She flipped the page, eyes darting. Her hands twitched once. She began with confidence, but quickly veered off course. "First, I'd map internal silos with a heat map, then use OKRs to elevate synergy between cross-functional teams, especially in terms of brand resonance." Chloe glanced at Evan, who was already scrolling through something else. "She's using phrases we abandoned 3 years ago," Jordan muttered. I caught Chloe mouthing to herself, all polish, no foundation. Still, no one interrupted. They let her finish, let her stand on the pedestal she thought she'd earned. When the interview ended, Sloane stood, shook hands, smiled like she'd just won a scholarship. The door closed softly behind her. Inside the observation room, Evan turned toward me. He didn't speak, just shook his head slightly. Chloe didn't even wait. I'll recuse myself from recommending. Malik sighed, tapping the folder. Honestly, I expected more depth. Jordan didn't need prompting. Route it to me. I'll review, I said, and walked back to my office without another word. Later that day, Sloane received the standard HR follow-up. She was probably expecting a yes. Instead, she found a single line that stopped her cold. Pending final onboarding approval from Executive Director. She clicked open the digital packet. There it was, nestled between generic HR language and a PDF. My name. Internal Approval Lead, Avery Bennett. I imagined her sitting upright in her apartment, fingers frozen on the trackpad, sweat beginning to form at her collar. Number it can't be her, can it? It wasn't vengeance. It was clarity, written in blue ink on the line she thought was guaranteed. She arrived early, not too early to seem desperate, but just enough to suggest punctuality wrapped in confidence. 10 minutes before the scheduled time, Sloane stepped off the elevator on the 27th floor with her resume-grade smile already in place. Jordan greeted her at reception, calm and unreadable. Ms. Bennett, the director will see you shortly, he said, leading her to the waiting lounge just outside my office. She probably expected someone to offer her coffee, maybe a folder, maybe a subtle reminder that this was routine, standard, beneath concern. What she got was silence, uninterrupted, air-conditioned, and sterile silence. The minutes dragged. 10, 15, 20. I hadn't forgotten her. I hadn't been running late. I was simply giving her space. To breathe, to think, to doubt. When Jordan finally returned, he didn't offer explanation. He simply gestured toward the double doors. She'll see you now. Sloane's heels clicked once, twice, then hesitated. The doors opened on their own. Jordan stepped back. She walked in alone. My office was untouched from last week. The same glass walls, same untouched Mont Blanc on the desk, same lack of nameplate. Only this time she was on the wrong side of the illusion. She stopped 2 steps in. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Avery? She finally said. I didn't stand. Hello, Sloane, I said, pen in hand, looking over the printed onboarding packet she thought would be routine. Her face tensed. I didn't know you worked here. I don't, I said simply, flipping to the last page. I run it. Silence stretched again. Not awkward, just precise. The kind of silence that cuts more than it comforts. She sat down across from me, knees crossed tightly, hands folded too perfectly. I had no idea, she began. I didn't even know this company was yours. It's not mine, I replied. But I decide who gets in. She swallowed hard. Her eyes scanned the desk, then my face, then the wall behind me, like any of it might offer shelter from what she had walked into. I earned this, she said. I went through all the interviews, passed everything. I belong here. I said nothing. And I know we haven't always gotten along, she continued, the edges of her voice cracking. But please don't make this personal. I looked at her then, fully. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe it was the light. Soft afternoon rays filtering through the blinds, etching shadows across her cheekbones. She blinked quickly, as if to escape the moment. I spoke quietly. I'm not making it personal. You did, when you assumed you'd never have to kneel. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I turned the form toward me, slid the pen from its holder. The tip touched the page in a single, effortless arc. Declined. Fails to meet ethical review. The blue ink gleamed under the light. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. This wasn't revenge. It was structure, order, a system finally balancing itself. Sloane rose slowly. Her jaw clenched, but her voice was hollow when she spoke. "You'll regret this," she whispered. I didn't respond. The first text in the family group chat wasn't, "Are you okay?" It was, "How could you do this to her?" The notification lit up my phone while I was making coffee. I didn't rush to check it. It was from the family group chat, named Bennett's United, though the irony had expired long before the name did. 4 unread messages, then 5, then 7. I tapped it open. "Mom, how could you do this to her?" "Aunt Kathy, I thought you two were rebuilding things." That was cruel. Mom again. "This wasn't fair. She didn't deserve that humiliation." Cousin Blake. "Wait, you're her boss?" Mom again. "You could have just talked to her, Avery." No one asked if I was okay. No one even paused to wonder why I had made the decision. I let the phone rest face down on the counter and took a slow sip of coffee. Black. No sugar. Sharp, just how I needed it. By noon, Sloane had left the group without a word. No goodbye, no defense. Just a gray bubble saying, "Sloane left the conversation." That, I suppose, was her version of diplomacy. An hour later, Dad sent a lone message. "Greg Bennett." I didn't know. That was it. 4 words, no punctuation. I almost appreciated the simplicity. I opened the photo folder Jordan had sent to my inbox. Inside was a high-res scan of the onboarding document. My signature was clear at the bottom. So was the red-stamped verdict. Declined internal ethics breach. I saved the image, compressed it, and sent it to the group chat. No caption. They'd said enough. Now they could look. Another ping. "Mom, this isn't how family works. We protect each other. We give second chances." I finally typed. "Me. Neither did I. When you clapped for her and handed me the dirty plates." Then I left the chat. It wasn't dramatic, just silent, final. A clean cut from the performance. That evening, I sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my apartment. Downtown Dallas buzzed below, indifferent and alive. On the glass coffee table in front of me lay a stack of unopened mail, an untouched bottle of wine, and the latest issue of Forbes. My name bold on the corner. The Invisible Executive. How One Woman Built a Silent Empire. The phone rang. I didn't have to look at the screen to know who it was. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was low, strained. I just wanted to say, "I didn't expect it to go this far." "Neither did I," I said. "I was proud of you, you know. I just didn't say it enough." I stared at the half-shadow of my reflection in the glass. "You don't have to say it now," I replied. "I'm not punishing you. I'm just no longer in the audience." There was a pause. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't hang up either. We stayed there, suspended until I ended the call. Later that night, I sorted through the mail. Bank statements, a few event invites, one soft-textured postcard with no return address. It was from my mother. No words, just a picture of a mountain and a faded postmark. I slid it beneath the magazine, tucked it under everything, and let the silence breathe. Some people write open letters. I prefer magazine covers. Jordan walked in without knocking. Her version of ceremony. In her hand was the new issue of Forbes, still warm from the printer. "They went with the title you hated," she said, placing it on my desk with a grin. "The Quiet Powerhouse." I didn't hate it. Not really. But I didn't smile either. The cover stared back at me. My face turned slightly to the side. City skyline behind me. Eyes unreadable. The caption beneath it. From shadow to strategy. How Avery Bennett rewrote the rules. I ran my fingers along the glossy edge. Not with pride. Not with bitterness. Just recognition. For years, I'd refused interviews, avoided press, declined panels. Let the work speak, I told myself. But the silence had let others speak louder. Family, colleagues, Sloan. That morning, we'd shipped a copy of the issue to every department, every investor, every boardroom partner. I added a few more, one each to my parents' house, Sloan's apartment, and Aunt Kathy's mailbox. No notes, no return address. The cover was enough. Jordan lingered at the window, watching the Dallas skyline melt into gold. "You know they're going to write their own version of everything," she said, not looking at me. "Let them," I replied. "The byline on mine is clear enough." A delivery arrived in the afternoon. White lilies, no sender name, just a plain envelope. "You'll always be our daughter." I stared at it for a long minute before handing it back to the courier. "Refuse delivery," I said. He didn't ask why. Later, scrolling aimlessly through LinkedIn, I saw Sloan's profile. The confident title was gone. Now, freelance strategic consultant. Open to opportunities. No posts, no updates. Just a hollow ring where pride used to live. I didn't feel joy, but I didn't feel sorrow either. By evening, the building had emptied. My office glowed with the soft hue of sunset bouncing off glass. I turned off my phone, opened Spotify, and let a playlist shuffle quietly in the background. A piano track played, one I didn't recognize but welcomed. There were no more unread emails, no pending approvals, no waiting rooms filled with expectation or judgment. For once, I wasn't performing. There was nothing more to prove. I was no longer the family's mystery, the unsolved riddle. The girl who drifted. I had drawn my own map and arrived. A knock at the door pulled me from the stillness. I turned. A young woman stood at the threshold, clutching the Forbes issue in both hands. Her voice trembled slightly. "Ms. Bennett, I read your Forbes piece. I just wanted to say thank you." I looked at her, eyes bright, hopeful, familiar in the way that only ambition is. I chuckled. "Then let's build something bigger. Together." They called me lost, silent, misdirected. A ghost at the family table, the one who was too sensitive, too strange, and too far behind to ever catch up. I stopped trying to prove them wrong a long time ago. Instead, I built quietly, through long nights, through failures I kept to myself, through victories I never announced. And then the day came. The resume on my desk bore the name that once lived in gold-trimmed frames across my parents' hallway. Sloan Bennett, my sister, their pride. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I simply reached for the pen, the same way I had reached for every hard decision that built Linkshin from the ground up. I let her walk in. Let her believe the door opened on merit alone. She didn't recognize the ground she stood on was mine. Or maybe she did, and pretended not to. Pretending had always been her favorite sport. When she finally sat across from me, eyes flickering between guilt and disbelief, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't mention the birthday I was forgotten, the graduation they skipped, or the family photo I was cropped out of. I just signed. One word, one stroke, declined. It wasn't personal, I told her, and I meant it. But it was inevitable. She built her image on borrowed words and expected the world to reward her polish. She forgot that truth. Not sparkle holds power in real rooms. The fallout came fast. The family chat exploded with accusations, confusion, and that one pitiful question. How could you do this to her? Not once did anyone ask what she had done to me. The past rewrote itself in their minds, trying to make me the villain in a story I never asked to be part of. But I didn't answer them. Not with texts, not with calls. I answered the only way I ever knew how. Through results. A cover on Forbes. A headline they couldn't ignore. The Quiet Powerhouse. How a forgotten daughter built a billion-dollar strategy empire. I sent each of them a copy. No note. No letter. Just my face on a glossy page they once said I'd never belong to. And when a young intern knocked on my door that same afternoon, saying she read every word and wanted to become someone like me, I realized something. This was never about revenge. This was release. She didn't seek applause anymore. She had outgrown the need to be seen by those who had chosen blindness. Because when truth is quiet, it doesn't mean it's absent. It means it's watching, waiting, and rising. Justice, too, can be silent. But when it speaks, it leaves no room for lies. Sometimes the sharpest blade isn't anger. It's a decision written in ink by someone who no longer asks for permission to exist. And in the end, even the loudest applause cannot drown out the signature of someone who finally knew her worth. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or erased by the very people who should have seen you first, I hope my story reminds you. Quiet strength is still strength. You don't have to prove yourself out loud to hold power. Sometimes the sharpest statement is the one written in silence, in knowing your own worth. Thank you for watching and spending your time here with me today. If this story spoke to you, please leave a comment below. Share your experience, your own quiet victories. And if you'd like to see more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time, take care, and remember, your value isn't defined by who claps the loudest. It's defined by who you choose to become, with or without the spotlight.